Good evening. We are continuing on with the project risk management. We left out two processes last time, and I intend covering them and then moving on to the next chapter. We were talking about the project risk responses. Naturally, we have identified the risk, we have analyzed them qualitatively and quantitatively, and now those risks which have been selected for quantitative risk analysis, we have actually measured how much impact each of those risks can make. Now is the time we create the risk responses for them. When we create the risk responses, naturally we do understand that some of the risks were positive and some were negative. And we defined that for positive risk, we have to increase the probability and impact of that risk because that is going in our benefit. And for negative risk, which is a threat, we want to decrease its probability and impact. So there are separate strategies for both negative and positive risks. We'll pick up the risk register and the risk management plan as the input, and we apply those strategies to them. And in addition to that, we have contingent response strategies. How do we respond to the contingencies? We use the expert judgment in that, and whatever strategy we have selected, we update the risk register accordingly, and if there is a need for certain measures to be taken according to the risk response plan, which we think we cannot take ourselves, then we will outsource those risks. So risk related contract decisions are made here, and resultantly project management plan and project documents are updated. Now, talking about the specific strategies, first of all, let us see, look at it from the negative point of view, the negative risk point of view. Even before I can give you the strategies, what would you like to do if there is a negative risk coming your way, expected to come your way? The very first thing you intend doing is you wish it would never have happened. It should never happen. Somehow you want to eradicate that risk altogether. So that is called hazard prevention. But we understand that risks are external in nature. They are not in our control. In most of the cases, we cannot prevent hazards from happening. But if we could, we would have gone for hazard prevention. But generally speaking, hazards are something bigger than risks. Hazards are not, for which you can do something. Like if there is a earthquake, you have no way of safeguarding against an earthquake except for taking few cautionary measures, making your building stronger or something. But what if due to this earthquake, the geography of the land changes and whatever you are doing, it is not sufficient. So hazard prevention is beyond the scope of the project. It is to be done at maybe the national level or even further on some international level, but hazards cannot be the responsibility of the project manager or the project. So the best a project manager can do is to avoid the risk. This is the very first option a project manager has, that he tries to avoid the risk. How do you avoid the risk? That is, if you feel that there is a likelihood of something happening in a specific period of time or a specific place, you avoid that time or place and get aside from that risk, as if when this risk happens, it does not impact you. But you see, um, if I avoid the risk, although this is probably the cheapest solution, but still this solution will also cause me some loss. For example, even if I'm taking the example of an earthquake, and there is a likelihood that there will be an earthquake, like if we have recently had a big earthquake and there are tremors coming, so probably how can I avoid the risk? So the construction work I'm doing right now, I may pend the work for some duration of time, maybe for a month, 2 or 3, I can pend the work. So I have avoided it. Or if I was planning to construct a house, I can pend the decision, or I can change the location. I can go to somewhere safe and try to construct the house there. So this is how we avoid the risk. If we cannot avoid the risk, and naturally avoiding the risk has its own disadvantages, you will have to pay for it. Another example could be, there is a likelihood that if you walk on the road, a truck is going to come and hit you. So you better don't walk on road. Walk on the footpath or somewhere else. Don't walk on road. So if you don't walk on road, the likelihood of a truck hitting you would be minimized. Now, risk transfer. How can you transfer this risk? Maybe you are unable to move aside from the road because there are no footpaths, there is nothing on the right or left of the road. Maybe it is a bridge and you are right in the middle of nowhere, and uh, you just can't avoid walking on the road, and there is a likelihood that a truck would be hitting you. Then you try to transfer the risk. You can't avoid it, you try to transfer the risk. How can I transfer the risk? Transference is like, I am trying to, you are walking with me and I request you to carry me on your shoulders, and you bear the blunt of the accident, and I will be saved, or if not saved, then I will be hurt less. But for your services of taking my risk, I will pay you. So, although this example looks very absurd, but this is actually what the risk transfer is. You see, insurance is a risk transfer. Although insurance does not save you from dying, but in case of your death, the people left behind would be benefited by some amount of money. Or for that matter, if you are doing a project and in that project a certain job you do not have any expertise, capability or capacity, or the work is too sensitive and you do not want to do it because it may go wrong and cause you a big damage. So this risk is there. So probably you leave it to the experts and outsource that portion of work to someone and pay them a premium, although pay them a premium for taking on that job. This is the cost of risk transference. But if something wrong goes on, then they are responsible because you are paying him, that contractor, to do that job, and if he doesn't do that, he will have to pay for it. So this way we transfer the risk to someone. Then the next mechanism is the mitigation. Mitigation is when you feel and understand you cannot avoid the risk, you cannot transfer it, then you have to deal with it. When you have to deal with the risk, what are the components of a risk? Risk has a probability and an amount at stake. If somehow I can take certain measures through which either the probability or the amount at stake could be somehow reduced, the overall impact of the risk will be mitigated to that extent. It is not necessary that mitigation could take care of the complete risk. Maybe there is some residual risk still left out, but then that residual risk might be in our risk tolerance. So I reduce the risk from the damaging situation to a bearable situation. So how do I decrease the likelihood of a truck coming my way? Probably I will put some hurdles in its way. I will, be more cautious or do certain measures by which the probability of that risk coming your way is somehow reduced. Or,
Excuse me.
yes please.
So then what's the difference between hazard prevention, risk avoidance, and likelihood reduction?
In hazard prevention is not in your power and you can't do nothing about it. Hazard prevention is beyond the project control. That I said the prevention of hazard is not the responsibility of a project manager. That could be the organizational responsibility or national responsibility or international responsibility, but not a project. Like, taking certain measures to reduce the noise pollution by controlling the flying hours of aircrafts. In London, there are no flights which fly at night. Heathrow is the biggest airport and they do not fly in any airliners at night because their citizens want have peace. They don't want airliners flying all over at night and disturbing them. So this noise pollution hazard, government has prevented at the highest level. But if there was a project running in that area and there was no such government regulation, no hazard prevention attempts had been taken generally, then a project could not have stopped an aircraft from flying or landing. So hazard prevention is not in the control of the project manager. Risk avoidance, as I said, we get out of the way of the risk. Risk will happen. But whatever I was supposed to be doing at that time, I will not do it. I have not taken any precautionary measures, but I have gotten myself away from the root of the risk. I'll give you an example for that. Say you have a factory which pollutes the environment, but when you created that factory, you took notice of all the environmental conditions and you look, established and located your factory far away from the population on a safe distance. So there was nothing wrong with the factory. Factory was abiding by the environmental conditions and the regulations. But later on over the period of time, your own workers of the factory, they started populating around the factory area and a complete town is developed there. One day the environment people came down and they said, your factory is polluting the area and you cannot have a factory where people live. Although the people who are living there are the factory workers, but this this is now a town established and you cannot have this factory here. So you have to either convert your system to a non-pollution environment, change your systems as if no pollution gets out of your factory and you take charge of that situation. If you can't, then you can't run this business here. So when factory does the cost benefit analysis, they find that cost of treating the pollution is so high that in that money they can install 2 new factories. So what they decide is they decide to leave this factory there and move, say, 30 kilometers away from that location in a remote land where there is no population and establish a factory there. So there will be a loss associated with it. They will naturally be spending a lot of money in doing that, but at the same time what they have done is they have saved their business and they have avoided the risk of closing down. Am I clear about these things?
Yes, sir. Yes.
And about mitigation, as I was saying, you will take certain steps which is in your power. And by taking those steps, you will reduce the likelihood or the amount at stake which is likely to happen in a specific risk. Because probably you could not have run away from this risk. Probably it cannot be transferred to someone else. Someone else is not ready to take the responsibility. For that, I have yet another example. Um, Karakaram Highway. Karakaram Highway was to be constructed, but the problem was that it was such a difficult terrain that none of the contractors in the country was ready to take on that job. It was being constructed. It was to be constructed by Pakistan Army, and they had a lot of resources otherwise in army, but they were not, trained to construct roads. So what army did was, army turned to their engineering corps and asked them to help them because engineering corps had the capacity to construct roads and everything. But if they were to do this job while being in army, the army work would be damaged. Army duties would be affected by that. So what they did was they got out few battalions of Pakistan Army Corps of Engineers and formed a separate institute by the name of Frontier Works Organization. Now this FWO was temporarily given a number of battalions from Pakistan Army Corps of Engineers. They were to be paid by FWO from this contract, and this difficult contract was awarded to FWO. And interestingly, they, being soldiers and just not only the constructors, they were able to build the Karakoram Highway, although at the risk of losing life, which did happen a lot on Karakoram Highway. They did lose a lot of lives, but at the same time, they did manage and try to mitigate the risk and try to reduce the amount of casualties as much as they could. and that was the cost of that risk transfer, risk mitigation. So I said one way of doing it is to reduce the likelihood, and the other was to reduce the amount at stake. If I am sitting in a room and it has a likelihood of 10% that it will catch fire, and if it catches fire, it will make a damage of 10 lakh rupees. So either I can work towards reducing the chances of this room catching fire, or I could remove the expensive combustible items from this room. Both ways the damage will be decreased, and because both of these items, the likelihood and the amount at stake, both of these items are actually multiplied to find the impact. So any one of these items, if reduced, will reduce the overall impact of the risk. And if somehow we can take care of both these aspects, I can reduce the probability down to 1% and also ensure that no expensive items remain in that building. I make it a rule that there will be no, antiques in the room, and there will be, only that furniture which is least possible to catch fire. So by that, I will control the damage. And if these two items, now I have controlled the damage, and now the damage is 1 lakh rupees, and percentage is 1%. 1 lakh into 1% comes out to be how much? Jimosan.
So 1,000.
How much?
So 1% of 1 lakh is 1,000.
1,000. And what was the impact when you have not taken this action?
The whole
And that was
1 lakh.
10% multiplied by 10 lakh, and that was 1
Ah,
lakh. So you see,
okay.
by taking these two measures, I have reduced the figure of 1 lakh to just 1,000. Okay, let's consider that yes, we have reduced the likelihood to 1%, but we did not do anything about reducing the amount at stake. In that case, the amount at stake remains 10 lakh, but the probability has come down to 1%. How much is the impact?
Ah, sir. The whole amount, 10 lakh?
No, I have reduced the probability from 10% to 1%.
Oh, okay. So that is 10,000.
10,000. Okay, let us say that we did not decrease the probability, we could not do that, and we removed all the expensive items. Now the worth of the items in the room is only 1 lakh rupees, but the probability is the same, 10%.
Again 10,000.
Wonderful. So you see, by treating any one of these items, either the probability or the amount at stake, I can reduce the overall impact of the risk. I can mitigate that, and if I can do this to both of these items, then it will be drastically reduced. As you have seen, it was reduced to just 1,000 rupees. So this is your risk mitigation. And the last strategy is risk acceptance. When you believe that you have done a thorough analysis. You could not have avoided the risk or transferred the risk or mitigated the risk. That means you can't do nothing about it. So you just accept the risk as it is because there is no other way available to you. So the last strategy with you is to accept the risk. And whatever happens, you bear the brunt of it. And contingency planning means the reserves, the use of reserves to cater for these problems. Okay, this was just a broad outline thing, and let me talk one more thing here. What was the risk exposure or risk impact when you did not take any actions? Yes, please.
Sir, in the same example, it was 1 lakh.
No, 1 lakh. Okay, fine. So that is called risk exposure before taking any steps. Okay, let's say that you have reduced the probability from 10 to 1%. So now it becomes how much?
10,000.
10,000. So risk exposure before minus risk exposure after. So that comes out to be 1 lakh minus 10,000. That comes out to be 90,000. So how much risk exposure you have reduced? 90,000. But now there is yet another question. Have you reduced the risk exposure free of cost? Did it not really, you didn't have to pay anything for reducing the risk? There was a cost involved. So that cost is called risk reduction cost. So whatever you have spent to reduce the risk, that is the risk reduction cost. You divide the 90,000 figure with risk reduction cost and you will find whether it is feasible or not feasible to spend money on this. Say the measures you take, they cost you 1,50,000 rupees. The impact of the risk was, the remaining exposure, the reduced exposure was 90,000. And you are spending how much? 150, which is much more than that. If I divide 90,000 by 150,000, my answer will be less than 1, which means I am spending more than the benefit I am getting. Therefore, this is completely not feasible and we will not like to take this mitigation action. What if it is equal to the amount you are saving? If it is equal to the amount you are saving, then you have mitigated, then the answer will be 1. 90,000 divided by 90,000, that will be 1. That means it makes actually no difference whether you take these steps and spend 90,000 or you accept the risk and it occurs and it gives you a damage of 90,000. You see, there is no fun in having that situation. The best option and the only viable option here is that your risk reduction cost must be less than the reduced exposure. If it is less, then it is feasible, but then It depends upon your policy that how much less is acceptable to you. So you have to take only those actions which benefit you the optimally. So let us take the same example of the room catching fire, and now naturally if it is the risk of room catching fire, before doing anything I have to do some kind of analysis to see why should this room catch fire and what could be the cause of that, why percentage is so high, why 10%. When you explore that, you will find the reasons for catching fire, and one of the leading reasons would be improper or poor wiring, chances of short circuiting. So that means maybe I say 90% of the risk can be mitigated due to this. But there are other features also, other functions also which could happen, like somebody smoking in the room, somebody using a gas stove and things like that, and they have just 10%, 1% impact. But 90% of impact is due to the wiring. So I decide to replace all the wiring with the quality wiring, which will eradicate or reduce the probability of this room catching fire due to electric shortage, short circuit. If I do that, what I have done is I have to actually calculate the price of replacing the wiring, and that price would be risk reduction cost. For example, the cost of replacing all the wiring with quality ducting and wiring is 1,50,000. Do you think it is feasible to go for this option? Yes, please. Asad, are you with me? Yes, Asad?
Sorry, sir. I had a call. I'm sorry. I couldn't get the last 2 minutes.
Okay. Okay. I was saying that you found out that 90% of the risk was due to the faulty um, power lines. The electric wiring had a chance of catching fire, and total out of the total 10% probability, 9% probability was due to this. 1% probability was due to other reasons, like gas stoves, some people smoking in the room and all that. So let's say I addressed in this 9% thing, and I uh, change the wiring of the room, and let us say hypothetically that I reduce this 9% completely. Now there is no chance that the room can catch fire due to electricity. But still, I have not treated the 1% which is due to other reasons. So this would be naturally the balance of the risk would be 10,000. Previous risk exposure was 1 lakh. So 90,000 will be the reduction in exposure. And when I calculate the cost of replacing the wire, all the ducting and wiring and all that, it comes out to be 1,50,000 rupees. So 90,000, which is the reduction I am receiving, to get that 90,000 benefit, I have to spend 150,000. So 90 divided by 150 would give me a negative value, which simply tells me that this is not feasible to replace the wiring. On the other hand, if the wiring could be replaced in 60,000 rupees, so 90 by 60 is 1.3734. So that looks a promising figure. That looks good. But if I have some other way of doing it, I can even reduce, increase this, reduce the probability and increase this figure of risk reduction leverage. RRL is risk reduction leverage. So that would tell me whether I should go for it or not. If I am spending 90,000 and saving 90,000, then it is one and the same thing. Whether I take this action or I don't take this action, both ways I will be spending 90,000 rupees. So the RRL of 1 is also no good. It is almost neutral. RRL of something lower than 1 point something is absolutely not feasible. And any value beyond 1 is acceptable. Say the total expense you make in exchanging the wiring is just 1,000 rupees. So 90,000 divided by 1,000 comes out to be 90 times less money you spent to achieve a benefit of 90,000. Are you with me on that?
Sir, I totally agree. But the issue is that it depends. From the cost point of view, obviously, it doesn't make sense. But from risk reduction point of view, it's better to change the wiring rather to have a fire.
Yeah, of course. You see, we are here treating only one factor, and that is cost. Sometimes there are other factors which are more important than cost. For example, there is a human life involved which will be affected. The cost of human life is much more than this 90,000 or whatever we are talking about. So we may spend inordinate amount of money which otherwise does not look feasible. We can spend 150,000 to gain a benefit of only 90,000. That is perfectly all right. Why? Because when we were catering the costs, the actual cost of the risk, we did not take into account the human life loss. So if we could add that thing into it, then the loss is not going to be just 10 lakh rupees. It is going to be much more than that. So, naturally, it all depends what measures you take. Somebody can say, well, this is a very preliminary kind of measure you are saying, change the wiring. Why should we not have, sprinkler system and this and that and very expensive system for, addressing this risk, mitigating this risk? But actually, I agree with you that all building code says that these kind of facilities should be there. But if you look at it from the feasibility point of view, none of those mechanisms are feasible until and unless we treat the human life and other things to be the cost, to be at risk. So if you are dealing with that, then you will estimate accordingly. One way of eradicating this risk of fire is you spray carbon dioxide into the room. Naturally, no oxygen, no fire. So fire will not be there, but then all the human life will also be extinguished. And we said human life was much more important. What could be more important than human life? Where should I be having this kind of system installed where carbon dioxide is released as soon as fire is detected? And we don't care if human life is there and they die. Ji,
So it could be any strategic facility or something.
of course, of course. Like you see, you have a nuclear plant, and if there is a short circuiting there and it burns out, and then there is a much bigger damage which is waiting for us. So for that matter, I would say the amount at stake would be very high otherwise. So for those kinds of environment, we probably would like to save the nuclear plant, and I am ready to sacrifice the life of all the employees. So I install the carbon monoxide sprayers, and that will ensure that we do not catch fire. Okay, do you understand this risk reduction de-risk thing? And does it look practicable to you now?
Yes, sir. It makes sense.
Okay, the negative strategies are, as I said, avoid, transfer, mitigate, and accept. Right? Avoid, transfer, mitigate, and accept. So either one of these four you have to choose, or you start from calculating the avoidance cost, then transference cost, then mitigation cost, then acceptance cost, or you can do all the four analysis and see which is most feasible for you. Then you can pick it. But for positive risks, the situation is completely reversed. We don't need to avoid the risk, we need to enhance the risk. The positive risk, the opportunity, I want it to happen to me. I don't want to avoid it. I want to enhance it. Second, I don't want to transfer it to someone. I would rather like to share it with someone. I want to share the benefits or the opportunity of this opportunity with other people also. So they can also be benefited out of it. I don't mitigate, rather I exploit this risk. In exploitation, I would like to increase the probability of the opportunity or the amount at stake. You see, if you are at a casino and you are playing a game there and you are sure to win, you are 100% sure that you will win. Will you not like to exploit this opportunity and put in as much money as you can? Maybe you take a loan from someone, a very heavy amount from someone, because you are sure that you are going to benefit. So as soon as you earn the money, you can pay that person back. But this is very tricky because exploitation, you have to be very careful that it should be able to produce the desired results. And last is acceptance again. Even in positive strategies, if you cannot enhance them, cannot share them or exploit them, then you have to accept them as they are. Whatever benefit comes your way, you will accept that. But you could not have taken any of the other measures than acceptance. Let me give you an example of share. In transference, what I did was, I try to outsource a portion of my project to someone who can guarantee that he will deliver that in that specific time. And if he doesn't, then he will be penalized for that. So essentially, that contractor is taking the load. He is taking the blunt of the risk. Now, what is sharing? Sharing is opposite of transferring. Here in transferring, we were transferring to risks to someone else as if we can breathe easily. But in share, I share my opportunity with others. I'm trying to construct a house and I need to install windows. I need 2 windows only. When I go to the market, they tell me that a window will cost you 60,000 rupees. But if you buy a set of 3 windows, it will only cost you 100,000 rupees. And that is a deal for a limited time. So what you decide? Definitely one window, it is even cheaper than the cost of 2 windows. 2 windows would otherwise cost me 1,20,000 rupees, and I am getting 3 windows in 1 lakh rupees. So, but I don't need the third window. I don't need the third window. So that will be lying with me as an asset, and I probably don't want to do that. So I go to the other project manager who is constructing the house in the neighbor, and I ask him that I have got this deal, and if I get 3 windows in a set, it will cost me 100,000. So would you like to share my benefit? You take 1 window, I take 2. I will pay 2/3 of the amount and you pay 1/3 of the amount. So what I have done is I have passed on that opportunity to another person, another project manager, and ultimately this is called sharing. Okay, are you okay with me?
Yes, sir. It's fine.
One more thing we need to understand, and that is regarding the transfer risks, risk transference. In risk transference, what happens is that we are trying to pass on the risk to the contractor, and we want, from our point of view, that all the risks must be transferred to him and we should be scot-free. Whereas the contractor will always try to avoid that situation where all the risk is on his shoulders. He would like to, reduce his share and put a burden on the buyer. I am the buyer in this case because I am buying the services of the contractor. There are various types of contracts, and the most ideal type of contract which shifts the whole effect of the risk onto the contractor is called firm fixed price. In that, I first calculate, I am trying to construct a house, I first calculate how much will it cost me if I do make it myself. Say it comes out to be 4 crore rupees. But you see, I do not have time to construct the whole house. I have to do my job. And if I don't do my job, then my salary will not be there. And if my salary is not there, then probably I cannot make the house. So you decide that you will get it done by a contractor. So you already have the calculation which you made for the house, which was say 4 crore. Now I ask the contractor to quote me how much will he cost me for the whole deal, for the whole deal. So he comes up with a figure that he will ask you 6 crore rupees. So if this is the bid we have accepted and we have contracted, then we are already paying a premium of 2 crore rupees in it. Actual job is worth for 4 crore and we are paying 6 crore. Therefore, we are paying 2 crore extra to the contractor. And why are we paying it? It is the cost of my time. If I had made it myself, then it would have been just 4 crore rupees. So the 2 crore is the premium I am paying for this insurance which I am getting from my contractor. So this is a type of contract in which the buyer risk is almost negligible, whereas whole of the burden of this risk has been transferred to the buyer or the contractor. So he has the highest risk at this point. And this is the best type of contract you can deal with in these kind of situations. But that does not happen. In real life, the contractors are much more intelligent and they don't just want to take the risks, but they also want to make the money. And at the same time, they need some security. So there is another type of contract which is fixed price plus incentive. In this type of contract, we do agree on a fixed price, just like in firm fixed price, but as a buyer, I ask the contractor that if you do this job earlier, I will give you an incentive. Earlier you do it, more you get. So I fix a percentage or an amount that per day saving would give him this much incentive. So that way we are benefiting by having some of the load of that contractor removed in shape of that incentive, and we are putting the burden of that incentive on ourselves. But at what cost? We are trying to get things earlier and faster and at the minimal cost. So cost does not, I think, matter here. It is more of the matter of time. So if he can perform better in a shorter period of time and complete the project earlier, for every day of the project completed earlier, I agree to pay him a certain amount, and that is the incentive. A very similar type is not mentioned here. That is called fixed price plus reward. That is that we do not fix an amount, but we promise to give him some reward if he performs well. Anyways, fixed price contracts are okay with us because they bear minimum or low risk at the buyer end and high or maximum risk at the seller end. Then there are contracts which are called cost plus. There is a cost plus incentive, cost plus fixed fee, and cost plus percentage of cost. Cost plus incentive is also called cost reimbursable. It is not the price now we are talking about. Now we are talking about the cost. So I say You construct my house, and whatever is the cost of material, I will pay you promptly. That is cost reimbursable. You show me the bills, I'll pay you for whatever you have bought. But for your services, I pay you an incentive. If you perform well and early, I will give you this much extra incentive. So here you have taken a large load of work or large load of risk, which is the cost. So all the cost is now not the baby of the seller, but the buyer. Seller is not bothered how much does it cost me, but he is only concerned about incentive. Therefore, he will keep buying the things and get the invoices cleared from you, and at the end of the day, he will ask for the incentive he deserves. So this is cost plus incentive. Then is cost plus fixed fee. We agree with the contractor that we will reimburse the cost promptly, but as far as his services are concerned, we agree on a fixed amount that this is the money we will pay him at the end of the work, at the end of the job, as a compensation for doing this work. So this is the fixed fee agreed already. Now why it is different from the cost plus incentive fee is because in incentive fee, cost plus incentive fee, we have given the incentive, and we are keeping the interest the of the contractor aligned with our interest. If he delivers according to our requirement, we are ready to pay him extra in shape of incentive. On the other hand, where there is a fixed fee, the contractor knows that this is the amount he will be receiving in any case, so he has no incentive to get the job done at cheaper rates or earlier. So he would just like to linger the project. If extra cost is being spent, he is not really bothered because you are paying it. But he is only concerned about one thing, and that is his fee at the end of the work. So here you are more at risk than the contractor. Last but not the least is the cost plus percentage of cost. And that is the most dangerous and most riskiest strategy, in which the buyer bears the brunt of the whole risk and even more, and seller goes scot-free. Seller has absolutely no liabilities whatsoever. Cost plus percentage of cost is, construct this house for me, whatever is expended, you claim it from me, your cost will be reimbursed. And at the end of the day, how much money we have spent for the whole project, 10% of that amount would be given to you as your compensation. So now he only wants to increase his percentage of cost, which is fixed at 10%. So how can he increase that? He will probably damn care about your project cost. He will go for the most expensive items, and that will add to his 10%. So this type of contract, cost plus percentage of cost, is the worst type of contract from the buyer's point of view, and is the best kind of contract from the seller point of view. Now, when you have studied all these different types of contracts, then you will be better able to understand that the true situation would lie somewhere in between. Contractor will probably never agree for a fixed price contract, and we will probably never agree for cost plus percentage of cost. So actually the contract which will be negotiated between the two parties would lie somewhere in between. So some other strategy we have to use, but still we desire that it could be a firm fixed price, and if we can uh, make a deal on firm fixed price, that would be the ideal. This much okay?
Yes, sir. Yes.
Okay.
And sir, this thing, I'm sorry, this thing was only for the risk-related contracts, or it's just, general
You see,
contracts?
it is for the risk related contracts especially, but all other contracts also we would definitely like to minimize the risk on them and put it on the shoulder of the contractor. So this applies to all types of contracts.
Okay, sir. Thank you.
Then the other thing is the insurable risk. If you get the insurance for the project or for your factory or for your assets, that insurance will save you something. Maybe the factory burns down, but insurance company will pay you back something, which is sufficient to get the things going again. So one is a direct property damage that can be insured. That is the insurance of physical assets like equipment, materials, property, automobiles, and etc. Other kind of insurance could be indirect consequential loss. Indirect consequential loss suffered by third party resulting from action by the contractor. You see, you are driving your car which is insured. So any damage to your car will be borne by the insurance company. But what about the other car you have banked? So this deals with the third party. So if I meet an accident, my insurance company will not only get my car repaired, but will also repair the other car. So that is called indirect consequential loss. Third kind of liability is insurance is the legal liability. You know, while you are negotiating the contract, you will try your level best that the contract is in your favor, but it is very much possible that some of the clauses of the contract can be misinterpreted by the other party, and you cannot prove it otherwise, and they will impose certain penalties on you that are much more than what you have expected. This could be the design errors, bugs, bodily injury, project performance failures. All these things you must be protected from. So you could have a legal liability. Like you see, the big companies like the Samsung, they came up with Note 7, Samsung Galaxy Note 7. And Galaxy Note 7 had a problem, which they did not realize earlier. They had a big campaign, but at the end of the day, when the phone came out, it used to explode. Therefore, they had to take all of it back and discontinue that set. They paid back their customers. Why did they pay back to their customers? As if they can avoid the legal liability, which could be in millions for the losses. So they immediately took action and withdrew all the bought purchases of Samsung Note 7. So these are maybe there are some design defects. There was once a Toyota car which had a design defect due to which it was meeting a lot of accidents. So company recalled all the cars back and repaired them with the new system. So this insurance will defend you from such like errors and bugs. And last but not the least is the personnel, your people working in your organization. You would like to insure them for their health, for their life. So that would not only be a motivation for your workers, but it will be better for the smooth working of your organization. So these all types of insurances can be put together into a wrap-up insurance plan in which your organization has insured all their properties against direct and indirect consequential losses, legal liabilities, and all the personnel are being insured for health as well as life. So one single deal with the insurance company and covering all of these aspects would be called a wrap-up insurance. Next, we move on to the control risk. Control risk is the last process of project risk management. And like all other controls we have studied so far, control risk is responsible to ensure that whatever risks are planned and analyzed and responses were created, they all are being dealt with as planned. So as far as execution is concerned, there is no risk process there because risk is something which is not sure to happen. And we do things in execution which we are sure to happen, like the activities we plan, work we plan to do to produce the desired deliverable. So that work is a must, we must do it. That has 100% probability that we will do it. But the risks we don't know. So what we can do is, in control risk process, we keep a watch on the various risk sensors and try to develop an alarm system for the early warning system for those risks. So we will keep an eye on the circumstances and the environment which could indicate that a certain risk is just about to happen. So if we catch anything like that out of the identified risks, we will immediately take action and invoke the risk response plan. And once risk response plan has been invoked, we will again analyze the residual risk, whether the risk has been treated effectively or not, and what is the risk which is left. So whatever is left is called residual risk. And if the residual risk is within our tolerance, we will not take any further action. We will just keep it on the watch list. But if the residual risk is more, then we probably have to identify some other strategy. We will reanalyze the risk, the remaining risk, and we will develop another risk response plan. Similarly, in monitoring and control, we are progressively elaborating also. New facts are coming into picture, and therefore new risks are also to be identified, because I said all the risks could not be known. When you initially planned and identified those risks, you could have imagined and you could have thought of a number of risks, but not all. So when we are in monitoring and control, we keep doing the whole process of risk identification, risk analysis, qualitative and quantitative, and creating the risk response. So we'll keep doing all that in control risk process. So classically speaking, the inputs are the project management plan, risk register. Naturally, this risk register is going to be ultimately updated into the project documents after this process. Work performance data, as you understand, that all the controls do get this work performance data from execution. So control risk gets this data from execution and it compares it against the risk management plan and the risk register and take necessary actions for analysis of those risks, reanalysis of the new risks, and ultimately creating a new response. So this work performance data would result in output as a work performance information, as it was in the case of scope control, schedule control, cost control. All controls was getting the work performance data. All of them were analyzing and converting it into work performance information. Now this work performance information from all the controls is going to monitor and control project work process, which belongs to integration, and that process consolidates all the work performance information into a work performance report. Now why I have said that, because a copy of the work performance report is also received as input in control risk. This work performance report is also required by managed teams in execution. It is also required by integrated change control in monitoring and control. So it is only few places where this work performance report is being input. Tools we will have to reassess all the risks. We will do the risk audits. We will find the variance and trend analysis, naturally based on the respective schedule management plan and cost management plan. Technical performance will be measured, reserves will be analyzed, and meetings will be held. Resultantly, we will have the work performance information from the work performance data analysis. Anything has to be changed in the plan, it has to be moved through a change request, and the updates to the project management plan, project documents, and organizational process assets will occur here. Gina, are you all right?
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
Rest of the slides are just giving you the explanation of each one of those terms: variance and trend analysis, technical performance measurement. You can go through it. As far as the change request is concerned, change request will result in these two actions. Some of the actions could be corrective actions. These corrective actions are recommended with the change request, and those corrective actions are something which is going wrong, how to correct it. Maybe through quality assurance, maybe through other things, we will improve those things and we will apply those corrections to the actions. Or some of the recommendations could be for preventive actions. A damage has not occurred yet, but it is highly likely that this damage will occur. So the prevention measures you take, that would be the recommended preventive action. So that was all about risk management, and I think we should close down here, and we are left with two areas: procurement and stakeholder, and I will touch upon them tomorrow, and probably tomorrow and day after. Any questions?
Okay, sir. Thank you. No, sir. For now, it's okay. At the moment, it's fine.
Okay, wonderful.
I'm just
Thank you
going
very
through the
much.
book.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, sir.
See you
Have a
tomorrow.
nice evening.
Bye.
Okay, sir.